Fully Coolly Alternative, Episode 4, titled Pit a Pat, opens with Canada observing the formation of the various pins that have, been laid down across the face of Japan. This is a sign that medical mechanica is getting ready to engage in their flattening plan to control the minds of the populace. We also see that Haruko has barged in on his headquarters and is observing the movements of Medical Mechanica herself as well. She elaborates on the fact that her plan is basically to engage with Kana and her little crush on Sasaki. And that will be what she will be doing moving forward in order to gain what she is seeking in this particular series. As you know, more than likely, it's something to do with Adamus. Later, we meet up with Kana, walking to school. And we also see Sasaki, riding on a bike, having the basketball team trail behind in order to train, for further games. But we also see that Haruko has begun her plan and is basically making advances on Sasaki in order to get a rise out of Kana. She even goes as far as to do this right in the classroom as well. And Kana is livid. And it is not helped by the teasing she gets from her friends as she does her best to deny any feelings she has towards Sasaki. We also come to find out that one of the basketball teams in the region that was going to the playoffs had 10 of its members mysteriously transfer, making it so that the Kana School's basketball team will be advancing to the playoffs or something along those lines. I don't know basketball terminology, so whatever. This is obviously a ploy by Haruko in order to, advance on her position as temporary basketball team coach. We see the team go at it, and we've come to find out that our protagonist's school's team isn't the best around, as Ada is completely unable to focus at any turn. However, despite all this, Kana has dragged everyone along mostly in order to observe Sasaki and what's going on with him. Specifically, the continued advances of Haruko. However, Kana ends up being beamed in the face by Ada with a stray shot, with him also being taken off guard by Haruko's advances on Sasaki. This even kind of erupts into a whole situation between the two of them, with Ada getting pissy at Sasaki for, the whole kissy faces that Haruko is making towards him, despite the fact that it is in fact not Sasaki's fault. And in the ensuing scuffle, Sasaki accidentally knocks down Haruko and ends up on top of her and, starts to try to treat her injuries, which Haruko makes no effort to hide the sexual tension going on in that moment. And as Kana observes, and her friends continue to tease her, her NO channel starts to act up and she makes a break for it. And Haruko ends up a little bit upset over the fact that nothing has really come about. Oh, the whole, frustration and, surge of hormones that Kana had going for her. Normally there would have been something sprouting from her head, but it seems like she's just, getting to the point, but it's not really developing into anything that Haruko can use. We also see a Medical Mechanica robot observing from the other team. We then pick up with Kaneda, who is observing a press conference by the Kumoto, prime minister. And as Kana leaves her part time job in frustration, we also see the Prime Minister enter as well, despite the fact that apparently her press conference is going on live, and kind of, to a certain degree, berating Kaneda and his, lack of observation on the movements of medical mechanica and what exactly they're up to, despite the fact that Kaneda's organization has gone through some budget cuts, and he says that they will be moving in the next 2 weeks, with their plan going into full fruition within four. Um, the Prime Minister also notes the fact that Kaneda had actually been involved with Haruko in a previous incident where she had gotten injured, and they had had some form of relationship, only for Haruko to naturally use Kaneda in this instance as well, which she does for everyone, and she managed to pull out what looked to be a toy gun, and ultimately discarded Kaneda for the fact that he seemed useless to her and any plans she had going. Meanwhile, we pick up with Kana trying to talk to her friends into helping her with the situation between Sasaki and Haruko, only for Sasaki to show up and talk things over with Kana, stating that there's nothing deeper going on between him and Haruko. However, before anything can really truly develop between the two of them, once again Kana's NO channel acts up and she runs away. Kana then is seen sulking the next day as Haruko continues to move in on Sasaki. And as everyone talks things over, they question why Kana is so interested in Sasaki specifically, considering he's simply the basketball team manager and not an actual player. Pets elaborates in saying that Sasaki has a sort of nerve disease, I guess you could call it, which keeps him from being active during any form of sports. However, they're interrupted by the intervention of Haruko, who has come looking for Sasaki, and a confrontationist standoff ensues between the two of them, with Kana questioning why Haruko is going after Sasaki, and Haruko simply stating that it is none of Kana's business and she's too young to truly understand relationships and love. This causes Kana to find her resolve and go in for a discussion with Sasaki to talk things over and even confess her feelings. And Kana finds herself nailed in the back of a head with a basketball and on top of Sasaki. This was a ploy by Haruko to get, the mood kind of advancing, as all of Kana's friends observe as well, and the medical mechanica robot too. And as Kana goes in for a kiss, she ultimately decides not to, feeling that she can't quite find that same spark she initially had for Sasaki. And because of this, the medical mechanica blows out the entire storage room and absorbs Sasaki, merging with him into this even greater creature, which is then confronted by Haruko, who changes into a very interesting looking basketball outfit. And they have a little bit of a showdown, with the medical mechanica acting as defense and Haruko going in to score some points, only for her to jump and go for a dunk and only just smash the ball right into the robot's head, which takes everyone off guard, as it seemed like Haruko was trying to seriously play the game. This destroys the robot, and Sasaki is launched out of it safe and sound. the next day, Kana simply apologizes to Sasaki, stating that she was ultimately her feelings didn't really manifest the way that she thought they would, and she apologizes for any inconvenience to Sasaki, as she feels that she doesn't quite have the maturity or mental focus to actually go through with dating someone, as it just seemed like a shallow infatuation. Sasaki takes this in stride and simply moves on, which I think is very sweet. Many times people are heartbroken or certain things, but it's like it seemed like he just kind of accepted this fact and decides to move on, which I think is a really interesting way of going with this whole development they've had going ever since episode 1 with Kana's blossoming feelings towards Sasaki, only for her to ultimately come to the conclusion that she wasn't as interested in him as she initially thought. It was a minor infatuation, and ultimately she came to a very adult decision, despite the fact that ultimately she feels that Haruko was right, that she was too immature for love. But at the same time, it takes someone with, you know, a great deal of knowledge and maturity to admit when ultimately they didn't quite have the feelings that they thought they did for someone, and it was just something shallow. To not move forward with this and be pressured into feeling these things for someone you don't really actually, completely feel these things for. It's just like that's a great deal of maturity, at least from my point of view. And it's just kind of feeling that she was getting wrapped up in the whole frame of teenage life, and just feeling like she had to be in love with someone because that's just the thing to do when you're in high school. However, our episode ends with the smoke finally appearing from what was noted as a mall in construction, and it is ultimately turned out to be another plant for Medical Mechanica, who have finally started to make their move. And that's the end of the episode. I thought it was a it's interesting that the more we keep going forward, the less, Medical Mechanica robots really take form in these episodes. They're a lot less involved, or they appear in very minor ways to a certain degree. Haruko's plans and machinations don't quite work out the way that we've normally seen them come into fruition. Normally something appears out of someone's head and, it goes on the rampage. But honestly, Medical Mechanica robots have just been appearing in a variety of just random ways and encounters that don't quite even involve Kana sometimes. They appear in her general vicinity, but they don't appear the same way they did for Naota or even for Hidomi, which I think is one of the selling points of this overall series is in the fact that it works very differently to other seasons of Fully Gully. And it's also interesting to see Kana grow and adapt and evolve as a character, because she doesn't quite have the deep-seated issues that Naota or Hidomi even had. Naota and his inferiority towards his brother and his need to grow up, be a grown-up, and, develop, and Hidomi and her want for stagnation or to start over in order to be with her father. Kana doesn't really have any of that. It's more of a situation where she's just wants to live in the now, wants to have fun in the now. She understands that at some point she's going to have to grow as a person, but that shouldn't do anything to change the person that she is currently. It's just live for the moment, enjoy yourself, be a kid as long as you can, because in a few months to a year, that's all going to be over and done with. So just enjoy life for what it is. And it's also interesting to see the growing relationship between Kana and Haruko, where with Naota, it was a very, he saw her as a mature woman who he blossomed feelings for. And, ultimately he kind of came to an understanding about how he felt towards her and subverted a lot of her feelings towards him, went around certain avenues of what he thought and perceived and what she thought and perceived from him. But in terms of Hidomi, where it was a completely antagonistic relationship, where Haruko made no qualms about how she was just using him from the get go, in this series it feels so much less clear whether or not Haruko is actually trying to use Hidomi. I mean, it's obvious that trying to use Kana. It's obvious that she is, but at the same time, there are so many moments where she simply just talks things out with Kana, tells Kana something that ends up being a revelation to her later down the line. It's just like, for all of Haruko's meddling in terms of this season in particular, she helps more than she hurts in any form, way, shape, or form. In fact, she ends up helping the girls through a variety of things, overcoming certain shallow emotions that make them realize it's just like, hey, I actually was beyond this. This wasn't as deep of a thing as I let it out to be. And, there was more room for me to grow as a person beyond this. There's something very deep going on in this series, and I'm interested to see where it goes towards the end. But tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. What are your thoughts towards this season of Fully Cooley and this episode in general? How do you feel about Kana ultimately not really acting upon what she initially felt to Sasaki? Do you feel like it's a letdown after all this foreshadowing, or do you feel that it's a form of growth on her part, not acting upon something that she ultimately realized was a very shallow emotion and not the real deal in terms of love? What do you think about Haruko's part in all of this, with her, kind of acting more as a deterrent for, very shallow thoughts and emotions rather than using it against our protagonist? It's obvious that she's trying to get something out of all of this, but at the same time, she takes time out to actually help the girls and help them develop as people. So it's a very interesting contrast there. So, go ahead, tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. If you liked anything I had to say in this video, leave me a like. If you didn't, feel free to leave me a dislike. Lets me know where I stand on certain videos. And please subscribe for more Fully Cooley alternative. It just gets more introspective from here, I feel.